Okay folks, so first thing to do is we're going to go up to the File menu, down to Document Setup, and we're going to make sure that we have it set. I'm going to edit the artboards, and I want the units to be pixels. I'm going to hit Edit Artboards, and you can see Artboard 1 comes up here, and we want to change this Artboard Options, not from A4, we want to switch it to animation size. I'm going to use HD 1080 pixels. You could use DVC if you prefer, but this should set it to 1920 1080 pixels. You can have a center mark display, crosshairs, etc. The video safe areas are not a bad idea to have. I'm just going to leave it on the defaults for the moment, and I'm going to name it as animation. Okay, let's call it prep. Okay, for the moment, and I'm just going to hit OK. Now you can see the artboard's grown sort of fairly substantially. I'm just zooming out with Control and minus, and so I probably need to scale this up, the artwork. I could leave it in the center, so I'm just going to select all, make sure I'm aligning to artboard, center it vertically and horizontally using the align tools. Double click on the scale tool, and in this case I'm going to punch in 200, and with preview selected, that probably looks about right. Now bear in mind we're changing the aspect ratio, so we're no longer at A4 size, we're at widescreen, and therefore this one can be brought down. Now I can make it fit the artboard for the moment, just by dragging the little handles, and if you hold Alt, it usually scales both sides, but obviously I've accidentally moved this. I can make sure it's centered, and that gives me an idea what it would look like. Now if I think that's a bit large, okay, I can scale it by eye. It all just needs to be something you're comfortable with. This is maybe a bit big for me. I don't want it as small as it was, somewhere in the middle, probably a bit like this. I'm going to give it a fair amount of breathing space because it's kind of an ident. I mean, this is just for the purposes of demonstration, so obviously if I was making it to go in an app, I'd want to scale it accordingly to the size that I'm likely to use, especially to the biggest size. Now, the beautiful thing about Lottie and about vectors, because these are shapes, not bitmaps, is that they're resolution independent, so they're always razor sharp, which is why we make logos and brands like this. And it also means that obviously it can be scaled without any loss of quality on any format. So I could put this on, if it was a responsive piece of design, at the end I've got an animated logo, I could have it on an app, on a small screen, a large screen, a tablet, a desktop, a massive desktop with huge display, even data projector, etc. Okay, so that's the sort of power of vector, and also the power that Lottie gives you in terms of leverage output. Once you've made your animation, you can scale the animation when you apply it into web pages, apps, etc. With no degradation to quality, and it doesn't tend to affect the file size at all either. Okay, so I've done that now. Now what I want to do is start breaking them into layers. So you can see we're all on layer 1 at the moment. I'm just going to jump back to that base layer. So I brought in this as a placeholder. I'm going to make sure that I can see my layers palette, which is this little sort of diamond on top of another diamond type icon, stack layers. And you can see at the moment that I've got all these different groups, and I could go through and try and find individual things in here. But at the moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the logo, and I'm just going to run ungroup a few times. So you can right click and hit ungroup, and I'm just going to ungroup several times till everything is basically at the base layer. You can see at the moment all the letters now are, but there are quite a few elements that aren't, so I'm just going to hit it a couple more times if I can. If I can't, you can see that certain things are grouped, so I can go in and ungroup those. And I'm just going to look down here in the layers. I can see that there's still a group here, so I'm going to click that, and I'm also going to ungroup that. Just hit ungroup, and I don't know where these are actually. Where are these items? Okay, they're in performance there, that's right. That looks like it's a group because there's still a toggle here, so I'll select that. Okay, we'll sort that one out in a second. I'm going to keep that for the moment as it is, and that's a group. So again, I'm going to right click and ungroup. Now I don't want these two to be separate. This is meant to be a case. This is a custom bit of typography that I made. So I want it to be seen as a single entity. Obviously it's a sort of bit reflective of the actual logo itself, which was part of the idea. So this company, by the way, they make like air filtration, and the concept behind this logo is that this is kind of now I'm looking at the inverted one, but normally this would be black on a white background, and this would be the dirty air coming in. Then it goes through this filter point, and then out of here comes clean, breathable air for your engine. That's the kind of concept. Now I want to keep this as one entity, but what I'm going to do is ungroup it, and then I'm going to use the Pathfinder tool to make it a compound. So rather than it being two items that are being grouped, I'm going to click here to unite, and what that will do is make it a single shape. Now it does sort of regroup it anyway, but I'm alright with that. I know it's now prepped. So let's start moving these things between layers. I'm just going to snap up layer 1, and I'm going to keep layer 1 as like the one I'm going to throw away at the end. So I want to end up with just this black shape left on layer 1. So first thing I need to do is just create a new layer. You can do this at the bottom of the layers palette. Down here there's a little plus symbol, or from the flyout menu here for new layer. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you want to color them and call them things, you can do. By default it will automatically color them any color that it determines going down the list slowly. So let's put in here shape 1. Okay, I'm going to leave everything else on defaults, and I'm just going to hit OK. And at the moment what I want to do is I want to move this, and this is going to become shape 1. I just need to give it names that will mean something to me when I'm in animation. So when I select it, you can see that it has a blue selection around it. If you're new to Illustrator, this is Illustrator's way of telling you that it's on the blue layer, or a blue layer. And there's a little blue dot next to layer 1, which is showing me that the artwork that's currently selected is on that layer. If I click that blue dot and drag it up to shape 1, making sure both layers are unlocked, it moves it. So now that item is on the shape 1 layer. You can see it's changed the outline and the handles to be red to show me that it's on the red layer. And if I hide that layer, you can see I've only moved that item onto there. So for the moment, I'm just going to hide it, and I'm going to repeat, but I'm going to now call it, you've guessed it, shape 2. So again, I want to take this item, and I'm going to click on the little blue dot and drag onto there, and I can hide it. So again, I've got these layers. I'm slowly building up effectively the animation. Then I've got the TM, which is the trademark symbol. Now I want to keep these as 1 because I don't really see any benefit. This is a minor thing that needs to be on the brand because it's a registered trademark, but it doesn't need to be visible all the time or animated separately. I don't think there's any particular benefit from an animation perspective in spelling out TM or putting the N and the T. So I'm going to treat them as one item. So again, I'm just going to hit Pathfinder to unite, which effectively kind of groups them. I'm going to again create a new layer. I'm going to put TM in. Could put the shortcut for the symbol, but it's no need. That makes enough sense to me, and I'm going to drag it onto that layer. And again, I'm going to hide. Okay, so I've basically created these 3. Okay, all I might want to do now is organize them a bit better and shuffle them. I'm just going to leave them for the moment, but we'll do that in After Effects, and I'll show you how this comes into After Effects, and you can still edit the layer order, etc. So, if you change your mind about something, you don't have to necessarily go back to Illustrator. So we'll just leave them as they are. So next thing I want to do is I want to put all of this text, Acumen, the brand. I want to create a layer for that. So I'm going to do that. I'll just put this a bit lower. I'm going to write Acumen, put it in capitals just because it corresponds. And I'm going to select and hold down Shift each of the letters to add to my selection, adding each one. So I've now got all of those selected, and I'm going to drag them onto that layer, which happens to be highlighted in pink. So you can see that's all in one. The final thing I need is one more layer. Just put it at the bottom, and I'm going to call this Strapline, which is a common term used in sort of advertising for like a proposition line that often is associated with a brand. So you might have Coca-Cola, it's the real thing, or something like that would be their strapline. So this time I'm going to click outside the canvas, drag over all of the performance air, but it's also selected this black background. It's a lot easier than shift clicking all these separate letters. Hold shift and I can deselect the background layer. So now I just have Performance Air lettering selected. Drag that onto the strap line and we should be sorted now. Now that should leave just the rectangle left on layer 1, this new background that I've put in, which for the purposes here I'm going to temporarily call background, but actually I normally save a version like this and then I will save an export version to go into After Effects, and I will remove the background from there, because in After Effects I want to color the background using the composition settings instead of having a black asset in there, so I can quickly change the background color without having to edit shapes, etc. It doesn't make a great deal of difference to me, it's just more cohesive. It also means that you can potentially output it and remove the background completely, so that your animation could be on a transparent background effectively, and therefore you could pass it into any application, put it on any colored background subject to it still being legible. Obviously with this logo it's reversed out black, therefore it didn't need to be used on a dark background. So actually with the brand quite often we use a dark grey rather than the black. It's an alternate colour. So let's just check all of that, and you can see we've got shape 1, this top shape, we've got shape 2 on a separate layer, trademark on a third, we've got Acumen the word, and we've got Strapline. So fairly happy with that, but what I might want to do, and I'm not sure I'm decided yet, but sometimes you might storyboard this and come up with an idea. I'm not sure whether I want to punch each letter in separately or I want to just put a wipe across the whole word. So at the moment what I'm going to do is just hedge my bets. I'm going to grab the Acumen layer, select it, grab on the thumbnail, drag down to the plus symbol, and that will effectively duplicate it. Or alternatively you could select it, come up here and say duplicate. Okay, and what that has done, if I stretch out my layer thing, is it's created a copy. I'm going to move that just below. I'm going to hide these other layers for the moment, so I'm focused just on the copy. Now you can see all the other layers are hidden, even the original Acumen, and also I can lock all the others for now so I don't accidentally damage the wrong thing if I wish. I'm going to open that layer up, and I'm now going to break these into separate layers. So I could go through here and select each one and identify what it is and name it as an A, for example. Then we've got the K, so you can name, these are just defaults. It's telling you it's a path object, but you can come in and select by using this little dot, but you can see that they're not in the right order at the moment, so I might need to restack them. I like to be organized in my workflow. I need to select the right layer, so that helps me later on sort of understand. It makes it much easier to find stuff when I'm looking for it. So again, you can sort of see some of these are in the wrong order depending on what order they were in the group in the first place. So this should be the U, it is. So you can see I've stacked it this way, so it reads like that. And then what I'd probably want to do is, rather than have this all in one group, I would want to probably turn these into separate layers. So again, I'm just going to do that. You can create sub layers in here, but I'm going to actually, which is effectively kind of what we've got, but I'm going to create new layers here, a number of them. And just sort of for the purposes of this, I'm going to make these, let's make them all yellow or orange. Let's go for orange. No, gold. Here we go, gold. Okay, so this one's going to become layer A. I'll move it to the top. Select my A, drag it onto that layer. Then I'm going to make this one decay. So again, I'm going to select that. It's gold anyway, so I want to select the K, move that up to that layer. This one's going to be the U. So again, double click it to bring up the properties, go to gold, keep them all the same color just for my own sanity. So I'm going to select the U and shift it onto that layer, making sure I've got the right one. Then I come into here, this is going to be M, get the idea. Pick gold again, wherever it's gone. E. And N. I've got a few spare there that I don't need. So any I don't need, I can just bin. And I'm going to pick my M, drag it onto my M layer, pick my E, clicking on the circles here to select the objects on that layer or sublayer, drag it onto the E, and finally click this one, drag it onto there. So this layer now should have nothing in it. You can see there's no ability to open it, so I can get rid of that now. Okay, so I'm just going to check that. So I've got my A, my K, my U, my M, my E, and my N all broken down separate layers. So I can now, I could lock them, there's no need. In this case, I'm just going to hide them. In fact, I'm going to unlock everything because I don't want them locked when they go in. So I've got strapline. I've got either all the separate letters, or I've also got the whole set as a block. I then have the trademark symbol. I have shape 1 and shape 2. Okay, so I'm going to save that. So I'm going to just hit save as and stick it on the desktop. And let's just call it, in this case, we're going to save it as Acumen logo. We call it animation prep. Okay, and I'm just going to hit save. I'm just going to save it with the defaults. In this case, strangely, it says it's saving as Illustrator 2020, but I'm pretty sure I'm in 2022 here. But it doesn't really matter. You could save it in an older version, depending on which version of After Effects you're using. Okay, so that's all prepped. I can close up the layers a little bit, and I'm pretty happy. And then final stage is select the background. You can see I've unlocked things and I've hidden the individual letters. Now, when I bring it into After Effects with the options I'm going to use, it should automatically do that. Now, if you had 1,000 things on different layers and you want to keep them separate, each layer can be brought in as a separate thing within the composition. You could bring the whole lot in as a flattened composition into After Effects. There is, I think, a script that you can use as well. So if you've got like a million things you want to separate them all and you don't have time to do all this, there is a kind of like separate objects to layers script, I think, that I've used before on the web, but I don't probably have it installed on this machine. So I can select this background layer and I'm just going to hit delete. And it's just going to warn me that it contains artwork. In other words, the big black rectangle. I'm going to say yes. And I'm then going to turn on view and I'm going to have show transparency grid. And I'm going to go file, save as. This is the version without the background. So I'm going to put in here animation. Let's call it layers. Layers to AE, After Effects. Okay, and hit save again. And we're done. Okay, so that's the prep stage. What we're going to do is end it there, and we will rejoin in After Effects, and I'll show you how to import that, and again, bring these layers in. Now, the beauty of doing this again is that I don't have to hand position and make sure I've got all the right coordinates and everything. You know, if I suddenly discovered that my logo needed to move a bit to the left or something like that, if it wasn't aligned or the logo didn't need to be aligned, I can realign it in here and just save this version of the file, and everything in the After Effects thing will be updated, etc. So this is kind of the prep workflow we use. So rejoin me in the next tutorial and we'll bring that into After Effects.